Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2021 Federal Election All-Candidate Forum. I'll be your host, Chuck Fowler, with the Fort St. John Chamber of Commerce, along with our media partners, Alaska Highway News, CJGC, Energetic City, Moose FM. Today, we are our hosts, our candidates today is going to be Bob Zimmer with the Conservative Party, Corey Longley with the New Democratic Party, Dave Jeffers with the Maverick Party, Amir Avali, I butchered that, sorry Amir, Ryan Dick with the People's Party, and Catherine Kendall, the Green Party, Phil Huquin with the Canada's Fourth Front. We have a variety of topics we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about COVID-19 pandemic and the healthcare, jobs and the economic recovery, environment, Aboriginal reconciliation, and foreign policy. So I guess first off, let's just give congratulations to all the candidates for putting their name forward, putting your name in the hat for any public office from dog catcher to MP takes a certain amount of courage. So a round of applause for all the candidates for putting their name forward in this. It's a short campaign of 36 days, but it's a marathon for everybody. There's a Pigeonhole link, so to ask for questions, it's pigeonhole.at/2021 forum. So there's questions already on there. There's a number of questions already on there to be, you can upvote the questions. There's lots of questions on there populated, but you can certainly upvote those questions as well. So we're going to give the candidates each a little time slot of 45 seconds just to give us a little bit of an introduction, why you're running. Just give us a Coles Notes version of yourself and why you're running, and we'll start off with Amir. No, Amir, we got a bit of an audio issue there. We'll come back to you. Let's go with Bob. We'll do Bob first.
Thanks, Chuck. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, we got you good, Bob.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity tonight. I just wanted to say hi to everybody that's watching. Why am I running? I care about our country and believe that I wanted to make a difference when I first started, and I still do. I think there's an even bigger mess to clean up now, 10 years later, and have made a difference locally and nationally, and hope to continue that work into the future. So thanks for the opportunity again, Chuck, and best wishes to all the candidates tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Let's hear from Corey next, please.
Perfect. Thank you for the opportunity, you guys. I'd like to let you know that I'm coming from the unceded territory of the Lake Tonight, and it's a fantastic place to work and play and to make a difference. Why I am running? Well, we've had 10 years of an MP that actually hasn't accomplished anything, and in fact has actually stood in front of some of the people that he claims to represent. I got to the point where I could not accept that anymore, and I decided that I had to run, and that's why I'm running. I'm running to represent every single person in this riding. I'm running to make a difference. I'm running to make sure that we have fair representation for every member of this riding, not just a few that are on a checklist for the Christian Life Coalition. That's why I'm running.
Thank you, Corey. Let's go to Catherine next. Ms. Kendall.
Did you have the volume already on then?
Yeah, we got you there,
okay.
Catherine.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. Good evening. Thank you again for hosting me. So my name is Catherine Kendall, and I live east of Prince George. I've been living in this area for well over 20 years. As a single parent of 6 children, I see the future for my children through their eyes. It does not look promising in regard to the climate changing effects upon the environment that sustains our lives. The Canadian government is not willing to take any of the necessary steps to acknowledge this crisis. It's business as usual. There's no time left to waste on empty political promises and resource extraction methods and industrial activities to exacerbate this issue. I'm offering my time, integrity, and commitment on behalf of the Green Party of Canada to bring forth tangible solutions that address climate change impacts now, not later. My background is environmental health, agriculture, community development, mental wellness, and listening to the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Mr. Jeffers, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the time, and everybody that's tuning in. I appreciate you being here and paying attention to the message. I'm running because I got frustrated, and it's a difficult thing to watch somebody that you respect in Mr. Zimmer do what he can to represent the area and have his party turn his back on all of us. And it was frustrating. So I'm running to support Western Canada. It's the system itself that needs to change, and the Maverick Party is here to change it. We don't need a single vote in Ontario or Quebec. We can represent the needs and wants of Western Canadians first and put them first and have more autonomy and control over our resources and our prosperity for the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. Ryan, Dick, you have the floor.
Thanks for allowing me to come and represent the People's Party of Canada at this meeting. I decided to run because I was seeing a concerning amount of government overreach in my life and the life of many others, and I feel like the solution from any of the other parties is not to reduce the amount of government influence, but often increase. Anyways, many of us know that this pandemic response has been a large disaster in a variety of ways, and I believe the People's Party of Canada has a solution that is actually based upon common sense. That what we've done so far has created much disaster, and continue on in this direction is just going to create more. So.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. And I think we have Amir's audio problem solved here. So Amir? Okay, we'll move on. We'll see if Adam can get that fixed up for you, Amir. So we're going to move on. The first section is going to be COVID-19, obviously the elephant in the room, and healthcare. So we're going to turn it over to Matt with the Alaska Highway News. He's going to start off our question period. Again, it's going to be question and then 45 seconds for your answer. And then at the end of the section, we're going to have kind of a 3-minute open debate. So your rebuttals, let's leave till the end, and then we can have rebuttals at the end of the question period. So we're going to turn it over to Matt with the Alaska Highway News.
Hi, thank you, Chuck, and thank you, candidates, for being here with us tonight. I apologize for some of the technical difficulties we're having here right off the hop, but please bear with us. I've joked with my family and friends over the last 18 months, I should say, that they felt kind of more like a decade. I think I speak for many people. There's been a lot of anxiety over these last 18 months during the four waves that we've had. And we've seen a lot of civil unrest during this election campaign. After September 20th, what path does Canada take in managing COVID-19 and the pandemic? Do you believe in federal vaccine passports and federal vaccine mandates? Are those the tickets out of this? Do we have better options? How do we balance our response to the pandemic?
So I think I see Dave Jeffers put his hand on first. Actually, we got to backtrack. I have my apologies. We missed Phil in that first introduction. Oh, we don't have Phil? Okay, sorry. Dave, go ahead. You were going to answer the question first.
No, all I was going to say was that we missed Phil
Yeah.
in the introduction, and to give him his 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Dave.
So who's taking that question then?
So Matt, who do you want to answer the question first?
I'm sorry, Chuck. Do we have Phil on the line? Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties, folks. We will certainly be talking about internet and the connectivity here in this forum.
Bob, go ahead, Matt, and start Matt's question off.
Sure. Maybe just refresh us with the question again. It's been a little while, just to make sure we get it right on. So go ahead, Matt.
Sorry.
Again.
For sure. Thanks, Bob. After September 20th, what path does Canada take to manage our national response to the pandemic? Is it vaccine passports and vaccine mandates? Is that our ticket out of this? Do Canadians have better options? How do we find the balance? There's a lot of opinions on this, and it seems like we've lost the center, so to speak.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt, for that. Right at the beginning of the crisis, we, as opposition, fought for Canadians to have access to vaccines. The Liberal government was very slow in acquiring those vaccines, but now they're available, and a good thing for Canadians who choose to use them. We do not support mandatory vaccinations and support the right for you to make your own choices when it comes to vaccines. For those who are unvaccinated, we continue to believe in reasonable measures such as rapid testing to help protect everyone, especially the most vulnerable. We also need an internationally recognized travel document for Canadians who wish to travel abroad. Only the federal government can provide that document. It is up to individual foreign governments to establish vaccination rules for travelers, and countries around the world are now requiring proof of vaccination to enter their country. This is simply about supporting Canadians who want to travel to those countries. For those concerned about the vaccine passport plans being put forward by the BC provincial government, I encourage you to contact Premier Horgan and your MLA to discuss these provincial plans. Thank you.
Thank you,
Pass the
Bob.
buck.
Corey, go ahead, Corey.
Here's what it is. I believe the question actually posed was, how do we balance our response? Well, how about we use science? How about we use kindness? How about we use the safety of our friends and our families, the people that we care about? I actually had an opportunity last night to go out and have dinner with friends, and it was so refreshing to walk into a place where I knew that everybody was already vaccinated. Everybody that was sitting in that place had shown their vaccine passport, which is a very simple thing to do. And we had a fantastic time. And it was super easy to do. No one had to lose anything. No one lost their rights, which I don't understand what is going on here. None of this is mandated. It's voluntary. You opt in or you choose to opt out. You have a choice. Make that choice. And I will tell you right now that the NDP is firmly in approval of vaccinations and passports.
Thank you, Corey. Catherine, how would you take it next?
Thank you. Every person in Canada who's eligible to get vaccinated against COVID should do so for their own protection and for the protection of their community members. Canadians need to be literate in transmissible disease, and this time they are not. They're becoming polarized on the topic, vaxxers versus anti-vaxxers, moving the issue into a human rights debate. Creating mandatory legislation for vaccinations does not work as well as it states it will. Individuals with medical conditions, religious and cultural convictions, and those that live rurally and remotely will require flexibility. Canadians must become literate in transmissible disease prevention. This is something that the Green Party is advocating for. Yes, we agree that passports will be necessary and allow people to understand who's covered and who's not, but we need to understand that there are people that have not enough information, making their own choices. But as we were discussing just a few minutes ago, that when you walk into a restaurant, you'll want to know that people are covered. And this is the only way that we'll be able to do that.
Thank you, Catherine. Ryan, do you want to take it next?
Yeah, I'd love to take a crack at this. I'm sure everybody knows that. The government has misled the public on a number of issues. One of them is lovely Justin Trudeau and his ideas that if somebody doesn't get vaccinated, it's risking his children's life. Okay, so in BC, we have had 0 deaths between 12 and 19 in the 18 months. We've had 2 deaths that were COVID related, not necessarily because of COVID, in between 0 and 19 in the last 18 months in the province of BC. It's not dangerous to youth. I just spoke to somebody and they were saying that some teachers that they were deeply concerned because they just had a meeting that they were talking about allowing children 5 to 12 to make their own choice on vaccination. You think we were going to end with 12 to 19? No, it's going to keep going. And unless we put an end to this, it's going to be worse yet. It's not stopping here unless we put an end to it.
Thank you, Ryan. We're going to go next. We're going to get to Emily with CDDC. She's going to ask her question in COVID-19 healthcare related. Emily, you're up next. Nope, we don't have her audio, girl. Oh, it's back to me. Just a second. We're having audio issues with Emily. Emily, just a second.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. We have you now. Go ahead.
Oh, you can hear me now?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So my question is, what is your party's plan to address the crisis level nursing shortage in northern communities? Will you partner with local members of the BCNU to implement these changes?
Corey, you got your hands up. Let's go with you first. Oh, just a sec, Corey. But Corey now? Sec, Corey. Corey, we can't hear you yet.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. You're on now.
Excellent. Thank you for the question, Emily. And what the NDP plans and what I specifically plan for this region, because we all know health is considered a provincial thing, but you can still do stuff federally, right? Which our previously sitting MP did not do. What we can do is ensure that there's proper education and that the kids that are training here want to stay here. So what we do is we take the debt that they take on from student loan, because it shouldn't have to burden that. We remove it. We train our nurses here in Dawson Creek at the Northern Lights College, and hopefully those people will see what a loving and awesome community and great place the North is, and they'll want to stay. That's only one part of our plan. We also plan to do all kinds of financial assistance and incentives for physicians and other professionals.
Excellent. Thank you, Corey.
Exactly.
Dave, what's your thoughts on Emily's question?
Thank you. Nurses are incredibly important in our community, as are all health workers. And right now we're facing a very difficult position where the vaccination and overreach of government is going to force these people either off the job or have alternatives to what they want to do through coercion. So the first thing is to do is to lift that mandatory vaccination portion of it. But we've also got to support the nurses in terms of education, bringing more people to the front. The latest chapter in unveiling our nurses schooling in Fort St. John or in this region is fantastic. It's a great step in the right direction, but we need to do a lot more in order to support healthcare and draw healthcare workers into that space. Our seniors are at risk, especially when we're shorthanded. We have closures happening right now. We need to draw more people into the space for sure. And my time is out.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. Bob? What's to Bob?
Absolutely. We need to do everything we can to support our healthcare workers and frontline workers, especially during the COVID crisis. We've seen mental health challenges across the board, and we need to help where we absolutely can. Our plan is to inject $60 billion over the next 10 years into our healthcare system nationally. That's above and beyond what's already been committed. We believe that this will take away some of the stresses that are in the healthcare system currently. And we need to support our workers in the best way we can. They deserve our best.
Thank you, Bob. Catherine?
So the Green Party will remove the barrier of educational costs so that any students passing high school and interested in following up with either a college diploma in nursing or a university degree to be a doctor will not have to bear the burden of the costs for them. And then creating the incentives to advocate for the healthcare system and the healthcare services to be a priority, to be funded and well staffed, so that we are not experiencing any shortages as we move forward into the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Mr. Dick?
All right. The People's Party of Canada will replace the Canada Health Transfer cash payments with permanent transfer of tax points of equal or equivalent value to the provinces and territories to give them stable source of revenue. In practice, Ottawa will give up its goods and service tax and let provincial territorial governments occupy this fiscal room. It'll establish a temporary program to compensate poor provinces whose revenue from the tax will be lower than the transfer payments, and create the conditions for provincial and territorial governments to innovate. They will be fully responsible for healthcare funding and management and fully accountable to their citizens for the results, while Ottawa will respect the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. Just so everybody knows, we're still having trouble with Amir and Phil's audio and video. So we're working on that behind the scenes to get those folks up and running with their audio and video. So that we're not leaving them out. We're just working on some technical difficulties. Up next, we're going to have John with Energetic City Moose. He's going to ask his COVID healthcare related question. John, over to you.
Thanks, Chuck. So this question's for all candidates. The NDP and the Liberals pledged to criminalize protesters that block hospitals or harass health workers, with demonstrations at hospitals happening across the country. We've gone from frontline workers being heroes to now being protesting in front of hospitals. What are your thoughts on these protests, and should we have a penalty on people protesting in front of hospitals?
Mr. Jeffers, why don't you start us off on that one?
Thank you. Protests are an extremely important part in order to get our point across, but stopping people from getting health services is absolutely wrong. It's the same thing that happens when somebody stops somebody from trying to get to work. Protest at your government offices, protest in safe spots, in parks, wherever, but don't hinder anybody's ability to obtain health care or feed their family or obstruct them from getting to their office or to their job. Protests are important, but do it appropriately.
Thank you. Catherine, what's your thoughts on John's question?
It's an important one. I definitely do not. I'd support any individual that's willing to move forward with a protest on an issue that they feel is important to them, but not at the risk of others. I don't believe that the hospital is a location for any type of protest in this means. I go back to my statement that Canadians must be much more literate in transmissible disease prevention. I believe if we provide this education center so that people understand how it is that these diseases are transmissible, people will better understand that in high stress environments where multiple people are coming together are becoming incubator locations, and so we need to educate people about that.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Mr. Dick, your thoughts?
So I think that protesting is a necessary part of society, and it's our right to protest things that we are concerned about. I do agree that protesting at a hospital is not productive. There was a lot of news media that was saying that it was violent and rude. The ones that I have been at, I would have challenged that if I had seen that. And I did. The ones that the first protest that I attended was specifically a number of nurses requested people to come support them. And I went and supported them, and they felt genuinely cared for. And this was in City Center in Fort St. John. So I agree. Hospitals are not a good location for it, but it's a necessary part of being able to be heard.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks, Mr. Dick. Who else we got on here? Do we have any rebuttals? Corey, go ahead. You got a rebuttal?
Well, I'd actually like to respond to the question for the full minute if I could.
Yes,
but whatever.
Sorry, yes,
I can't believe that you, Ryan, actually went to one of these protests at a hospital. Shame, sir. That is not cool. 90% of HEU nurses in this province are vaccinated because they understand they're looking after us. They're not there to put us in danger. And the people that decided to get in front of those ambulances, shame. That's all it is. Smarten up. Here's one thing that Ryan won't talk about right now. We just had a baby that died in Cranbrook, a newborn. The mother is still in the ICU. This is what happens when we deny what is actually going on. I'm not even saying denying the science. All you have to do is phone the hospital and ask them how many ICU beds they have.
Okay, Corey.
It's not rocket science.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Longley. We're going to do the 3-minute debate now. Do we have any other rebuttals from any other the candidates that want to say? Any questions? Dave. Go ahead, Mr. Jeffers.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there's a tremendous amount of offering of infusions of cash, free this and free that. It's not free. It comes from your tax dollars, and you need revenues to support that. So when we hear numbers thrown out like $60 billion infusions of cash, there's got to be a revenue stream for that. So when you talk about revenue at the same time as cutting off revenue and meeting things like the Paris Climate Accord and changes that are going to hamper or hinder, I should say, this region's ability to prosper and take jobs away, take fossil fuels out of the equation, where we could actually do more harm than good by doing this. It's a real problematic issue. It's a big picture issue, and we need to look at it a lot more holistically.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. Corey, you got your hand up again. Go ahead.
Thanks very much. Dave, you're right. There's a difference between revenue and tax. And what the NDP has proposed, and what we believe is a solid plan, is those big companies that you seem to defend should be paying their fair share. You want to play in the game in Canada, you need to ante up. Anybody that plays poker will understand that analogy. If you're making over $10 million a year, you can afford to pay 1%. If you are a big company that's parking your money in some other country to avoid paying your fair share, we're going to bring you to justice, and we're going to make sure that you do pay. That's what it is. There's a difference between tax and revenue. And when you hear a businessman talking about revenue, don't forget profit. That's what Dave is talking about. And that's why it's interesting that he's chipping at $49 billion that we could get just by adding 1% on people who make over $10 million a year.
Thank you, Corey. Bob, I think you had your hand up.
And answered the first part of the question. It was dealing with the protests. So I just wanted to respond that it's part of Section 2 of the Constitution, the right for us to have peaceful protests, but I think the key is peaceful. I think what's sad about the situation is the healthcare workers are kind of a pawn in the middle of this discussion about a policy discussion or a policy decision that was made. And I just respect our frontline workers immensely, and I think they're the last ones we should be criticizing in this case. I admire their work, whether it's a nurse, doctor, or a lab tech. I appreciate all what they've done in this last 18 months. It's been a lot of work, and we appreciate them.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. Okay, we're going to round out this section and go to the next section. And what is the next section? Oh, jobs and economy. Very important. Matt, we're going to take it away with our next round of questions for jobs and economy.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you again, candidates. To our viewers, again, I'm just apologizing on behalf of all the broadcasters here that are working to bring this forum to you this evening. We are having some technical difficulties, and it's still trying to bring in Mr. Alavi and Mr. Hukin into this forum as soon as possible, and we will circle back to them to respond to the questions that have been asked. But on the topic of jobs and economy, and I think now is a good time to ask this, rural families, students, and businesses struggle to have reliable internet connectivity in Northeast BC to the rest of the province and the rest of the world. How would your party and government improve connectivity for everybody here in the region? I suppose we can go to Dave has his hand up first. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Matt. It's a great question, and it's a very complex one. Connectivity, as you can see, I'm sitting in my truck on the top of a hill just so that I can participate in this forum in a meaningful way without losing connectivity. Working from home, as we've all seen during the COVID pandemic, has become an option for a lot of us. And in communities like we have in many regions in this area, in Northeast BC, connectivity is going to be a crucial part of the job platforms going forward, and we can actually bolster communities by having better connectivity. So that's a primary goal. The second part of that is the carbon tax is going to hinder, and Corey was absolutely right. Profits are crucial when it comes to that, because energy companies that develop research and advancements in green and alternative energies are crucial, and those monies are badly needed to develop the next stage, which they drastically want to be a part of. So yes, revenues though come from tax.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. Let's go with Kathleen again this time around.
Thank you. The Green Party will establish a universal broadband strategy to give Canadians across the country and in remote areas access to reliable internet. Living in the rural regions, I understand the use of broadband and high-speed internet and how valuable it can be. And it can allow any one of us who lives in the north to be able to actually establish a business from home. And this is another piece of, broadening the opportunities for home-based economy and economy across the northern regions. A Green government will proceed with regulating the powerful platforms and streaming services through the CRTC, as envisioned in Bill C-10. Ensure that the CRTC reserves more broadband width for independent and nonprofit stations. Ensure that the CRTC maintains and updates their Canadian content regulations and definitions.
Thank you. Mr. Longley.
Thanks, Chuck. This is a really simple one. We've had an MP that was sitting there for 10 years, and he could have done something about this because this falls under the federal purview. When you have the CRTC regulating the public airwaves that we all own in this country, it's a simple thing to lobby. And you know who's doing the lobbying right now? TELUS, Shaw, all of the big companies. They're having beers with the chair of the CRTC right now. What that should be, and you can ask Adam Rayburn about this, community radio is where it's at. Licenses should be easier to get for people who want it. All we have to do is tell those companies as a federal government, you will do this. This is regulated, this entire industry. And the government could have done it sooner. We're in a pandemic. The kids need to use the internet to go to school. And as Dave was saying, it's the future of jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Longley. Bob, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck, for the question. Yeah, it gives me the opportunity to speak about the work that I actually have been doing in Fort Nelson and through the Pine Pass and getting high-speed internet access, whether it be Mackenzie to Powder King, up the Highway 911 service. We've already done a lot of work, and a lot of those yellow pipes that you see when you come to Prince George is exactly that. It's getting that high-speed internet to those rural communities, and that's happening right now. That said, there's a lot that still needs to be done. We have a plan to get rural internet broadband, rural internet access across Canada by 2025 in the next 4 years. So we have a plan. We've been working hard on it already. We have a ways to go, but again, we have a plan to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. We're going to try Amir and see if we got him here now with our audio video. Go ahead, Amir.
Thank you. Oh. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got a phone.
Can you guys hear me now?
No, we'll come back to you. We still got audio problems over here. Mr. Dick. We're going to switch over to Ryan Dick. Oh, do we have you, Amir? Amir, can you hear us?
Hi. Oh, good.
Can we hear? Yeah,
that's good.
We got you. You're here. Ladies and gentlemen, Amir.
Finally, now you guys can hear how my voice looks like. Okay,
there you
perfect.
go.
So let's do this. The question was regarding the internet connectivity. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So the plan that we have right now with the Liberal Party is that by 2026, 98% of all Canadians will be connected to high-speed internet. But let me tell you something. If you really want the government to see the force and get things done, I have a suggestion. You can actually put this as, because having access to internet is very crucial at this point. We learned this through pandemic that we had. So if we actually put this as a right, as a human right in our human right chart, then whoever doesn't have that access can actually sue the government.
Okay. Thank you,
that
Amir.
would be my response to have it.
Excellent. Glad to have you back on here. Mr. Dick, your thoughts on internet connectivity?
And necessary thing for society. I think to include it in the human rights might be a stretch. I think that we're all it's very valuable to all Canadians, and I think we need to pursue that.
Long-distance charges may apply.
There's a lot of overspeak. I'm calling somebody, or somebody's calling somebody.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hey, we got Phil. Let's have Phil while he's on.
Where are we at? Are you still there, Ryan?
I am, but Phil is on. Do you want to let him talk or no?
Keep going, Ryan. Then I'll circle back
Okay.
to Phil.
Okay, cool. Try to regain my train of thought there. Yeah, it's very valuable for all Canadians. I think to make it a part of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is a little extreme, but honestly, I do greatly appreciate what Bob has been doing in that field, and I think we need to work on doing politics in a way that we can actually acknowledge the successes of other members of Parliament. So,
okay,
a little thought for you.
I think we have Phil now. Let's see. Let's try Phil for his audio video.
Okay. I hope you can hear me now.
We got some phone interference here. Sec, Phil. No, looks like we don't have you. We'll circle back around, Phil. We apologize profusely for the technical difficulties. I still got a phone in my ear. Did we cover everybody off on the internet connectivity? I think we got everybody on that, right? Okay, let's move on to the next question that Emily's going to ask. We've got Emily's on deck that's going to ask a question for jobs and economy. Emily, let's turn it over to you.
Please stay on the line while your call
So
is
Canadians
completed.
are borrowing hundreds of millions of dollars every day to service a debt that's been run out over the past decade. So just servicing the debt alone every year costs more than we spend on taking care of seniors. So when politicians say they can't balance the budget in the next 10 years, it's not because it can't be balanced, it's because politicians are afraid to say no to the Canadians. So would you reduce the debt and thus reduce the rate of inflation that is currently crushing the Canadian middle class because of lack of political leadership over the past 15 years?
Thank you, Emily, for the question. Corey, why don't you take a crack at it first?
All right, let's take a crack at this. Here we go. The
Here we
NDP has promised anybody that's making over $10 million a year is going to pay the inheritance tax, and that's important. These things, to make that kind of money in this country, you get to play in our game. So that means that you should have to play by the rules and you should pay fairly. Every single person in here pays their taxes. Why should a company like Amazon be any different? Why should they get away with paying zero tax? They should not. And you were absolutely right, Emily. Politicians should be making hard decisions. We haven't seen it with the Liberals. We haven't seen it with the Conservatives. The NDP are going to make those hard choices, and those hard choices are going to make us all better because we're going to be able to afford the things that we need.
Thank you, Corey. We'll get more of it on the open debate. Mr. Jeffers, what's your thoughts?
Chuck, we're printing right now $424 million a day. That is going to drive inflation up. We're going to see interest rates rise because of that. We have non-committals from our current parties. Even the Conservative Party plans to balance a budget in 10 years. Tell me what you're going to do this term. It's avoiding the obvious of accountability. We need to look, and the other part of that you mentioned is the seniors. Now, if we get rid of equalization payments, there's a $20 billion flow that's going to go from the west to the east this year alone. 13.2 billion of it is going to go to Quebec. We can do a lot with that to look after our seniors, to lower medications, cost of medications for them, provide better care, infuse a lot more money into that from equalization. Equalization has got to go.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. Mr. Zimmer.
Again, thank you for the question. I think what's key to this whole discussion is really seeing our economy getting back on its feet again. We saw in 2011 to 2015, when we formed a majority, that we saw Western Canada and the energy sector performing at its best. Forestry was doing well. We had a soft lumber agreement. We had mines across the country that were operating also while doing it environmentally responsibly. that is the way we're going to unleash our economy and where we're going to pay for things, as some of the other candidates mentioned. That's the way we see our opportunity. Canadians don't need to be given handouts. They would rather have paychecks. As my colleague Pierre Poilievre has said many times, we need to get our economy going, and that's the key to our success.
Thank you, Bob. I think we have Phil now. Let's try Phil and see if we got Phil.
Hello.
Mr. Huquin, we have you. Welcome.
Very good. Well, I got missed now, so can I make up for lost time?
Let's give you a couple minutes on the clock. We owe you that, so go ahead.
Okay, fair enough. I am here because I represent direct democracy in Canada. We do not have that. We have top-down government, and it's not working. It's failing extremely badly, to the point where Canada's entire politics resemble China's more than Canada's. I believe this is what Justin Trudeau meant by his Great Reset. He wanted to recreate Canada in Chinese image, and I think that's what's going on. And I would like to say I was at the hospital. I wanted to go see what all the buzz was about. There was a lot of people there, and I'm very well known, and I know a lot of people in this Prince George area. Half the people at that protest in front of the hospital worked in the hospital. Doctors, nurses, people on cleaning staff. I know them. It's fact. And no one was blocking anyone's entrance to the entrance of the hospital. So anybody who says that needs to shake their head hard and shake the nonsense out, because you've been brainwashed by the media who wants you to believe that narrative. People have a right to vote on everything. Are you tired of being treated like a child and being lied to on the evening news every night for as long as you've been alive? And do you want to see this till the end of time? What I recommend to you is get on board with direct democracy. You get to vote on every issue that affects your life, and your vote counts. I would be your MP in Ottawa if so elected. I would stand for your vote, and I'm not there for the money. I pledge 50% of my MP salary to an charity or society within my riding. My riding gets to vote which charity or society gets that money. I don't see anybody else pledging anything like that here. If you care about this country, step up, buds. Let's see you do it. I'm doing it, and I'm doing it for the right reason, for my children and grandchildren. We don't need vaccine tyranny here. Liberals love to talk about division. We have division like you wouldn't believe, caused by liberals. They scare the hell out of our children with doomsday prophecies about climate emergencies. This stuff is insanity. They don't know how to fix a real problem, so they create phony problems. And I can prove that the carbon tax is based upon a fraud that is based upon Agenda 2019 and 2030. It is so provable. Anybody who backs it doesn't care about the environment. They don't care about pollution. They don't care about emissions. They care about getting the green out of your wallet.
Thank you, Mr. Huquin.
Easy to prove. I've got the trains shaking my house every night, loaded with coal, headed for China.
Thank you, Mr. Huquin.
One trip, one way. And that exceeds Canada's total limits for a year. So I say to you, go online. Go to cffdirectdemocracy.com or forthfront.ca. Check it out. Vote on issues that you care about.
Okay.
Your vote will count. And if you don't think I'm doing a good job, kick me out.
We'll go, Amir. We'll still circle back around to you on the deficit question, and anything else you want to address. We'll give you a little more time. Oh, I don't have his audio. I don't have your audio, Amir. Technology, excellent. Who am I missing? Catherine, I believe we haven't had your thoughts on the deficit and national debt. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you. Yes, so the Green Party will impose fair taxation, recognizing that the burden of taxation is not fairly distributed in Canada. Applying corporate taxes on transnational e-commerce, imposing a financial transaction tax of 0.5% in the financial sector, as France has done in 2012. Increase federal corporate taxes from 15 to 21% to bring it in line with our United States largest trading partner. Our former governor of the Bank of Canada states that are holding hundreds of millions of dollars in their bank accounts. And rather than reinvesting them, we need to see these dollars investing into the green renewable economy.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Corey, I believe have you been on the deficit yet?
Well, you know, the funny thing is they are all talking about these numbers like there's no pandemic on, right? When you look at the actual largest amount of money being spent by any government at any time, it would have been the Harper government. That's where our actual deficit comes from. So we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have to pay for things. We understand that, right? Healthcare has to be paid for. Ordering PPE out of country because of decisions the Liberals made. Buying vaccines because of decisions the Conservative made. We could have had Connaught Labs here. They decided to sell that off. Think about that. The NDP commits to making sure that all of our healthcare products and things like that are produced in this country, that are produced by Canadian workers who are well paid.
Thank you, Corey. Amir, third time's a charm. Maybe let's try this. You there?
Let's do this. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, we got you. Now we're on
Perfect.
national debt right now. Current government.
So
give us your thoughts.
Should I just circle back to the very first questions that I've missed and then come back to this?
Yeah, we owe you some time. Please do.
Okay, so I think the very first question was on COVID response. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
So I believe that if I'm, I just want to make sure that it's on the right side of the COVID situation. So with the COVID response, I believe that we have to just get things done with this pandemic, make sure that we push with the vaccination as much as we can. Point is, when people are talking about mandating, what they are scaremongering people is that you're just cornered to make only one decision, and that's to be vaccinated, which is not the case. The point is, we're traveling, getting on the train, getting on the airplane, going to the restaurant, and some of this actually is made by the provincial government, so it's not just the federal government and the Liberal Party that we're talking about. Point is that we want to make sure that you're not transmitting the virus with yourself. So that's number one. On job recovery, I believe that was also a question. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So with the job recovery, go and read yourself. The Liberal Party had 92% of job recovery. The closest country to Canada as of that point is the United States with 73%. So that's with the job recovery. Another question that we had from Emily regarding nursing crisis and the shortage of staff. The Liberal platform provides a path for hiring 7,500 more healthcare workers. We need to have proper, local training and incentive for people to actually stay. Another thing is that for that process, we need to make sure that, the interest is actually taken out of the student loan. That's also part of the Liberal, platform. And the other thing is that when we're talking about the frontline workers in the healthcare industry, what we have to focus is that the last thing that we want them to be worried about is that their crew is not vaccinated with themselves. So in that way, at least they know that they can actually focus on their job, focus on getting things done for community. And just on communities like ours, we have a $2.2 billion for short emergency fund for healthcare workers as well as a part of our plan. Now, what was the next question? The other question was criminalizing the protest. I'm 100% okay with freedom of speech. Quite frankly, I don't believe that some of this, the Ministry of Truth path that so many of our technology companies are going forward, I can't wrap my head around with that, and I believe that at some point we have to address this. Protesting in front of hospitals and the essential workers, I don't think that would be the best decision making and the best way to publicize your message. So it's just counter effective, let's say. Regarding the internet connectivity, I had already answered this. Servicing debt, it's a very important issue, but I want to give you an analogy here. If you're a father and you're the breadwinner in your house, and you have one kid who's doing very well and is doing perfect and has his own room, and then another kid is sleeping in the balcony, and someone says, hey, you got to do something about it, and you say, I want to be fiscally responsible. They're going to do something about the kid. They're going to either remove the kid from your household, or they're going to say, you got to show yourself to a psychologist. So I don't think that focusing on the issue of making sure that everyone pays their fair share, and at the same time bringing more government help, is a crazy idea when we have a part of our community that's just sleeping on the streets, and we're all forgetting about them. So I think I just covered all the questions. I don't know
Thank you,
like how long, but I did it anyway.
No, excellent. We apologize profusely for the audio and the video technology. So just so we're on track here, we're gonna have Ryan and then Catherine on Emily's question, and then we're gonna move on. So Ryan, you're up next.
Okay. The People's Party of Canada is the only party that has talked about balancing the budget within one mandate. We plan on cutting a number of ridiculous spending issues. We're going to phase out all COVID spending programs and reverse new spending programs announced by the Trudeau government. We'll get rid of the deficit by the end of the first mandate through fiscal prudence and spending cuts, including corporate welfare, 5 to 10 billion, foreign development aid, 5 billion, and CBC, 1 billion. Equalization payments and funding for programs which are provincial and municipal responsibilities. Stop using our tax system for political ends and make it simpler and fairer.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. Catherine, your final thoughts on Emily's question.
Yep, so back to the point that the Greens recognize that the burden of taxation is not fairly distributed in Canada. So this is where we would like to focus.
Okay. We're going to go to John with Energetic City Moose. He's going to...
Thanks. Yeah, so this next question is for all the candidates. I'm not from the riding, but I understand, in my short time here, that it's a more resource-based sector or economy up here. With that in mind, what are some examples of projects that are going to re-stimulate the economy and provide meaningful jobs in the region, which, like I said, it arguably relies on the resource development like oil, natural gas, and lumber, and so on?
Mr. Zimmer, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, great question. We have so much potential here, whether it be from Fort Nelson, a lot of natural gas up there, albeit dry. We have the timber basket now is basically north of Prince George, so we have forestry potential in our north as well. But what's really unrealized is the potential of our natural gas sector, not just in terms of the economy. We're starting to see that with LNG Canada, and it's going very well right now, the construction. They're about midway, just about achieving their peak construction. But to really get our natural gas to the world to reduce emissions, not only is that going to help Canada's economy, but it's really going to do good for the environment of the globe. So the potential is there. We just need to see it done.
Amir, your thoughts on John's question?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're good.
Okay, that's good. So, yes, our riding is a resource-based riding, and one of the best ways that we can actually make sure that our economy is moving toward a more greener economy, and at the same time we're providing support for people to have that transition without any hurdles, is that we can actually focus on agricultural law. Now, food security is one of the biggest topics here, and if we can actually focus on the food supply chain, we can provide Canada with the highest dominance, let's say, on the food security globally. The Liberal Party will provide the ocean ways support. Right now, the Conservatives are planning to get rid of it. And that's also part of the food supply chain that I was talking about.
Thank you, Amir. Mr. Dick?
The People's Party of Canada will counter anti-oil and anti-pipeline propaganda and radical environmentalists, and foreign foundations. They will repeal Bill C-48, they will repeal Bill C-69, approve pipeline projects using a streamlined process, find a private buyer for Trans Mountain, reassert federal jurisdiction over pipe production by invoking Section 9210 of our Constitution, whereby Parliament can declare any project to be for the general advantage of Canada. Work with industry and with our American partners to possibly revive canceled projects and keep Line 5 in operation.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. Phil, you're up next.
Yes, Canada should have the most powerful and overwhelming economy of any country in the world. We should be paving our streets with gold. If only government would get their knee off our necks. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's lumber, whether it's farming, whether it's gas and oil, the red tape will tie you up like a mummy, like an Egyptian mummy. The red tape is ridiculous. It's endless. Doesn't matter if you're trying to buy a house, if you're trying to move a house. A friend of mine recently bought a fabricated home, and he had to pay something like $20,000 just for the red tape nonsense related to that. This is craziness.
Phil,
and it doesn't matter what industry you're in.
We'll get some more of your thoughts on the open debate part, Phil. Miss Kendall, go ahead.
Thank you. The Greens would like to accelerate a transition to a net zero economy and become a world leader in clean tech and renewable energy. We have the potential to do that. We just need to put the science ahead of us so that we can maintain this goal. The jobs of the future are here. We can stay globally competitive and build a prosperous, sustainable future through these means. We can ramp up agriculture so that we can feed ourselves and not be concerned about climate crisis around the globe that hinders transportation routes to get food to our tables, especially in the rural north. So making sure we've got whatever means we need in our particular areas to grow. Holland is a great example. Smallest country, provides most of the food and export. Perfect example.
Thank you, Miss Kendall. Corey, your hands look like it's getting sore. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I can hold this up all night, brother. Here we go. Bob liked to mention pipelines. Well, the Trudeau government bought one for them for Christmas. So that was great. We have this pipeline that's going to be useless in about 5 years because we won't be able to sell the junk. So whatever. Let's just not even focus on that. You have to take your head out of the sand. We know that gas and oil is something that's going out. It's not going to be around for anymore. When we have wind, the best thing to do is build a sail, because that's how you take advantage of the environment around you. If we keep causing problems for the planet and making things dirty and gross, it won't matter how much money these giant companies are going to make, because we'll all be dead. We need to do a fair transition, as Catherine says. We need to concentrate and protect our planet.
Mr. Long, we'll get some, again, we'll circle back on the open debate. You can get some more in there. Last but not least, Mr. Jeffers. You there? Dave? Oh, we got audio problems on Dave, I think.
Thank you, Chuck. It's amazing to me in a resource-rich environment how so many people are anti. Oh no, not now. This is the most important. Do you guys are you me? Okay. This is one of the most important topics, and it's amazing to me on a resource-rich area in northeastern BC, we could actually lead the way back to prosperity for Canada. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're glitching a bit, Dave. We got you a bit, though. Yeah, we don't have your video's slow on
resources development.
Well,
resources development is incredibly important in this sector, in all of it. We've got agriculture, forestry, mining.
Okay, Dave seems to be
on and on. We can continue and to lead the world.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Jeffers. Okay, we're going to open the floor up on jobs and economy. So we're going to do a bit of a debate. Anybody have any rebuttals? Anything they want to start it off with in terms for jobs and economy?
Get rid of the
Mr.
red
Zimmer,
tape.
you got your hands up.
We'll have lots of jobs.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to some that are critical of our energy sector. It has such potential when you look at other countries around the world, and Norway being an example. Here's a country that develops its fossil fuels, oil and gas, but it also has, the highest per capita electric cars in the world. Here's a country that's managed to do both. And Canada should have 10 times, 100 times the economy of Norway, of which in Norway, I might add, doesn't have any debt. So
they are leaving.
Sorry,
they are leaving. And if you're going to use them as use them as a leadership example, I believe that this is an open section.
I know.
And if you're going to use Norway as an example here, you must also comment that they are leaving.
Bob, finish your thought. Corey, next.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that Canada's potential is huge in our resource sector. We should be not apologizing for it. It's always been part of our economy since Confederation has begun, especially in this part of the province where it's got huge potential in terms of forestry, oil, gas, mining. One thing that isn't mentioned by some of my opponents is critical minerals. They're going to be key minerals in the electrification of our future, whether it be battery-operated cars or battery-operated electrification of various parts of what we do. And that, guess what? We have that right here in BC.
Thank you, Bob. Corey,
that
requires... then Dave. Corey, go ahead.
Okay, that's fair. I assumed that I was told that this would be an actual open part of it. So I apologize, Bob. I didn't mean to walk on you there, but I thought that was what we were doing. Okay, so here's where we go. Norway, a perfect example of a country that is actually divesting and moving away from oil and gas because they see the future. We should be there. Why are we always pushing to do the same things over and over again that will take us a step backward from where we were? Nobody is investing in the telegraph right now. Technology is moving on, and we need to do that too. I do agree with Bob that rare earth metals in Canada are becoming more and more important. You can't have a cell phone if you don't use them. You can't drive an electric bus because you need to make the batteries for it. Those are all important. But these things need to be done in a constrained way so that we are not leaving giant big scars on the surface of our planet as we rip these rare earth metals out of the ground.
Let's get some thoughts from
One thing
Mr.
that you need for wind turbines is you need coal. Okay. I don't know if you know that.
Let's give Mr. Jeffers a chance to speak.
Yeah, I know that. But you can also do it without coal.
What we're hearing is absolutely political doublespeak. On one hand, it's nice to hear Bob promote the resources sector, mining, forestry, all of those things that we have in abundance. But at the same time, his party is doing things that are absolutely counterintuitive and to development of those resources. Corey, you mentioned the pipelines issue. That's a big one. Getting our liquids natural gas out to the coast and helping the big polluters like China and India is absolutely crucial. But we had heard from Amir that the jobs is 92% recovered. You're completely out of touch with this area, Amir. That doesn't work at all. But the political doublespeak has got to stop, and we need a voice in the West. For the West, that promotes only the West and not Ontario and Quebec.
Amir, you're shaking your head. You got a rebuttal on that. Let's hear.
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Phil, you're up after
perfect.
Amir.
Okay, perfect. So when we're talking about the oil and gas industry, this is just zoom out of the oil and gas industry. Think about any market. Any market has a supply and a demand. Right now, just go back a couple months ago during the COVID situation, when the oil and gas companies had to pay per barrel so that the oil and gas can be exported to other places. Now, when there is no demand on the other side, regardless of how much we produce, is not going to provide the jobs that we're looking for. Now, Dave, to your question about feeling the job recovery, we have to have someone that's fighting for us when they're sitting around the table and demand that our jobs can be filled with, regardless of whether we're getting it through immigrants, whether we're getting it through the locals. We have to have a plan. And unfortunately, Bob, I appreciate all your service so far, but the point is we didn't get your resolve through a conservative government. We didn't get it through the Liberal government. And that's why I'm running for this election.
Okay, let's hear from Phil. Mr. Dick, you had your hand up too. Okay,
Hello.
we'll do Phil.
Yes.
Do Phil, and then we'll do Ryan.
I would like
and
to
we're going
speak
to
a
wrap
little
it up on
bit
this
about,
section.
gas and oil electric cars. I'm not a techie, but I went online to find out more about electric cars. And the one thing I know without even going online is batteries and cold weather don't mix. When it gets cold out, your electric car has a very limited range. So as long as you're not going too far from home, it's not a problem. Apparently there's new batteries in the works that are impervious to cold, but that hasn't happened yet. The ones they're using right now, there's reports of cars bursting into flames and burning at 2,000 degrees, and the occupants not able to get out because the fire is so violent. And what I found out was the batteries that they're using are made using cobalt, which is carcinogen. It's actually a radioactive material, and it is mined in the Congo by child labor. What I also found out was that Norway has 60% of their cars on the road right now are electric cars. What no one is reporting is that the cobalt dust that is leaching off of those batteries is causing their kids respiratory disease and lung issues, breathing issues, and they're dying from cobalt poisoning. You won't see this in the mainstream news. Everybody has the internet at your fingertips. Just search it out. You will see that it's there.
Let's give
and
Mr. Dick
there's a lot
chance.
of people who have a lot of bank in suppressing this kind of information.
Okay, Mr. Dick. Phil, we're going to give Mr. Dick a chance to take a crack at this one.
Yeah.
Ryan, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to comment on Amir's statement that we don't have the demand for petroleum products. The reason we didn't have a demand is because your government shut the country down and the economy down, and people weren't driving anywhere, and there was no demand for fuel because of irresponsible COVID response. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Dick. We want to do Corey. Let's hear from you, Amir, and then we're going to wrap this section up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Corey.
Thanks very much. What we've seen so far is we've seen the House of Commons not working because we have seen the Trudeau government shut it down. That's what happened here. It's a vanity election. It doesn't matter which one of these two parties.
Supported by the NDP.
We propped up that's so that people could keep their lights on, Dave, so that they could pay for their groceries. That's exactly what we did. And when you look at pipelines, you guys are all rah pipelines in the West. Why haven't we seen a pipeline going to the East? Conservatives could have done that. Liberals could have done that. We could have got our fuel from Western Canada to the East. Well, why not? Because there's a separatist party there that wants none of it. That's exactly why. That's why Bob has been ineffective, and O'Toole's government is ineffective, and so are the Liberals.
Thanks, Corey. Amir, final thoughts on this debate part, and we'll move on to the next section.
I want to bring everyone's attention to a couple of facts, regardless of what party actually forms government. We have the climate change on the table. We have the COVID response situation on the table. Go check all parties' platform and see which party is more prepared and which party has a track record on implementing things that we can actually bring things back to a normal economy, and we can support a better phase out for our people in oil and gas industry. I don't know what you have, Phil, up there. The quality of the picture is not really good. So I think if you can say it, that would be better. Liberal deficit something. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't read it.
400.
Can I just say
He's
one
got
Let's wrap-
zombies outside the house. He's alive
Okay.
inside. That's
We'll
what
wrap
it
this
says.
section up. We're going to go to environment, and we're going to have Matt kick us off with the first question for the environment.
Hello, candidates. Thank you again. I hope this question might be a little bit more of, might see some more bipartisanship in this response, although it is quite a partisan issue. But the federal government is giving $5.2 billion to the Muskrat Falls Dam being built in Newfoundland. You may have heard of it. It's suffering a lot of setbacks and cost overruns. It's doubled in cost from $7.4 billion to $13.1 billion, I believe, at last count. The Site C Dam being built here just outside of Fort St. John is facing similar problems and has doubled in cost from $8 billion to $16 billion. Should the federal government fund Site C? Do you see a role for the federal government in that at all?
Let's start off with Mr. Jeffers on this one. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Chuck, and it's a great question, Matt. There's a lot of overreach here and a lot of things that have gone sideways when it comes to that. And you'll find that a lot of people that are advocating for the electric vehicles and a revamp they're also the ones that are fighting Site C. You can't have it both ways. In Site C, and I'm not going to address the New Brunswick one. I have a limited amount of time, but in terms of Site C, it's a responsible way to generate energy. But in the energy demand that's coming up, that's only part of the equation. The rest of it, and Corey is absolutely dead wrong in regards to oil and gas. The demand is actually going to go up and continue to go up over 40 years. If Canada negates that space
Thanks, Dave.
gets out of that space, it'll be filled by those.
Mr. Zimmer, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. I believe the question was about whether the government should fund Site C. No.
Okay, moving on. Let's go with Mr. Dick.
I'd actually definitely agree with Bob on that. I think taking a ridiculous project that has been horribly managed and ended up way over cost and giving them more finances is an unproductive way of handling mismanaged products or projects.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. Amir, your thoughts?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, yeah.
I think the Site C is a provincial matter. I know that there has been a lot of conflict around this, not enough consultation with our brothers and sisters of Indigenous people were made. But at the same time, I think if the question is, should the federal government fund this, as long as the provincial government is not willing to clean up the mess, I don't think so.
Thank you, Amir. Corey, go ahead.
Yeah, the answer to this one's pretty simple. The federal government should not be paying for Site C. We had this project pushed past the limit of no return by previous BC Liberal Christy Clark, and unfortunately the BC NDP is doing the best they can with this project that has been mismanaged from day one. There should be no more federal money or any extra money put into this project as far as the NDP is concerned.
Thank you, Corey. Ms. Kendall.
No federal funds should be injected into Site C. From visiting the area and seeing the new developments and feeling the tremors already instigated by the fracking in the area, we have severe instability that has been proven in the provincial reviews. This is a project destined for some serious failure.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Phil?
Hello. Yes, I would like to say on behalf of the Peace River Valley, it is one of the most pristine and beautiful places on the face of the planet. Doesn't matter what time of the year you go there, it is incredible. And I'd like to say something about the ugly windmills that are just plaguing the landscape in that country. And no one's talking about that, how much it cost and all of the waste. The same people behind the dam are the people who created these eyesores that are chopping raptors out of the air like a Ginsu chef. And they're completely getting away with it. If conservatives rubber stamp a project like that, You'd never hear the end of it because it's liberals who did it. Oh, it's just free pass for them guys, and they still are covering up the cost of that. So I'm tired of failed government.
Let's move on. We're going to move on to Emily's got a question that she's going to pose. So Emily, let's take it.
So I just want to correct the misconception that demand for oil is going down. OPEC is forecasting 100.8 million barrels of oil next year, and that's higher than the pre-pandemic levels. But having said that, in light of the historic heat wave that killed over 600 British Columbians, not to mention the fallout from recent wildfire seasons, what reassurance can you offer parents that you are doing everything in your power to halt climate change and protect our children's health?
Amir, do you want to start us off?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so with the demand and the OPEC, what OPEC said, we have to make sure that we're not putting this misconception that we are also part of OPEC. The situation with our market is different. Right now, we're only selling to the United States, and that's it. We have to diversify that first before we're moving on to other conversations with like OPEC or anything. But with climate change, quickly, we have to address this. Net zero by 2050 is our plan with the Liberal platform. And we have a 5-year target for the oil and gas industry to meet that as well.
Okay, thank you, Amir. Mr. Dick? You there? Oh, I think you might be muted, Ryan. No, we don't hear you, Ryan. Ryan, we'll come back to you. Mr. Jeffers?
Thank you. This is a critically important part of the platform for us. Climate change is very, very significant, and Canada is responsible for 1.5% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. It's a small world, and we need to be able to affect the big polluters more, and by getting our resources offshore and helping countries like China and India, we can reduce the global emissions much, much more significantly. It's a better way to do it, and we generate resources that we can put towards alternative energies and lead the world in development of those energies, making our companies prosperous and paying their fair share. That gives us all of the social programs that we've become accustomed to.
Thanks, Dave. Corey, go ahead.
Thanks, Chuck. This is an important question, and the NDP have some solutions for this. What we're looking at right now, and Phil, I love you, man, but I don't think that they're ugly. I think they're awesome, and they look great. And a lot of the problems that you were pointing out about being Raptor Ginsu knives, that's awesome, brother. Paint one of the blades. That's what a lot of the European people are doing, and they're making sure that the birds can actually, and the raptors, they can spot those blades, right? So they'll fly away from them. We need to have, like in Dawson Creek, community-owned energy generation systems. It's interesting, that community set of windmills that was there was actually bought by a private company. So guess who is getting to see the profits for that resold energy to the grid? The private company now, not the co-op. So what we need to be seeing is more of this kind of activity. We need to see electrification of more of our vehicles to get us around, and we need some smart grid technology too to make sure we can control better what we're using.
Thanks, Corey. Bob?
Yeah, great question, Emily. It's been referred to already, getting our natural gas, our Canadian natural gas to world markets. But what may not be even known by some of the panelists here is that we have some of the cleanest natural gas in the world, because a lot of the process has been electrified. I've been out there to the sites personally to see that some of the pumps and that are electric, right? So it makes it our energy that's already clean even cleaner. And another case for us is even aluminum. We produce some of the most environmentally sound aluminum in the world. And we need to get more of Canada to the world, is what I'm saying. And we can have a win-win. We can win for our environment, and we can win for our economy by doing it.
Thanks, Mr. Zimmer. Ms. Kendall, you have the floor.
Thank you. And the only way we're going to win is by creating a waste management industry to recycle every ounce of waste generated by each sector of society. The amount of food that we waste, the amount of chemicals that get wasted, the amount of spills that go into our pristine waterways. We need to slow all resource sectors to a full overhaul to manage each industry sector by sector, prioritizing the oil and gas industry. I had a chance to visit sites and received a binder this big of the chemicals that are injected into our underground crevices in between our shale pockets. And some of those chemicals are actually patented. We don't even get to know what they are. And they bring up many types of chemicals that end up in our waterways, chemicals that we don't even know what kind of impacts they'll have on our waterways and our fish.
Thanks, Ms. Kendall. Mr. Dick, I think let's try your audio again. You there? No, I don't have you on your audio. Phil? Let's go to Phil. You can hear us, Phil?
Why I'm being charged carbon tax on my natural gas bill. The charge for that exceeds the amount of natural gas I actually use. And for all you people who seem to be very concerned about the environment, I would like you to just look in the toilet next time you flush it. Where do you think that goes? It goes into the river. Prince George puts 28% of their sewage waste is untreated. So you want to stand up for the environment? What about Canadian rivers? We get a free pass on this. And this is disgusting. We pay tons of dollars in taxes. You want to do something for the environment? Get the sewage out of the rivers. Every city, every town, all the way along the Fraser, every river, all across BC and Canada is putting their raw sewage into rivers, lakes, ponds, and streams. This is nonsense. And gas and oil, you might not like it, but it's what gives us the quality of life we have, and it will continue to do so for a long time because there is no real replacement.
Mr. Dick, we're having trouble with your audio. Just try to maybe to reconnect. It sounds, for some reason, we can't get you to come through. We're going to go over to John for our next question on environment. So over to John.
Thank you. So the federal government's giving $5.2 billion to the Muskrat Falls Dam in Newfoundland, and that's suffering a bunch of setbacks and cost overruns, and it's nearly doubled from $7.4 billion to $13.1 billion. Now, drawing a comparison to the Site C Dam facing similar problems, doubling in cost from $8 to $16 billion. Should the federal government get involved with Site C or fund Site C?
Go ahead. Sorry. John asked the same question. So I'm just gonna, one of the questions that we've had come up and we'll ask is tying environmental to our jobs. We might as well tie both the sections together. The balance between jobs and environment is obviously important. Some of the platforms you guys have, in particular the NDP and the Greens, have ending subsidies for oil and gas. One of our primary economic drivers up here is oil and gas. So voters are obviously going to have a concern about that. So let's get that up on the table and on the record. And we'll start with Mr. Longley on that one first. Corey.
Or are you going to John? Okay.
No, we're going to Corey. Here we are.
Okay, that's cool. I'm getting tired about everybody saying that oil and gas is a primary driver in this region. It's not. Farming is far more important. Logging is far more important. Oil and gas is going out. It's phasing out right now. On those big convoys that we had going to Ottawa, where we were concerned about the oil and gas jobs, I understand the people in those convoys were concerned. Not a single CAO from any one of these companies that were situated in Calgary was in there with them working guys. Not one. Where's the money going? It's not staying here. These companies could care less. They take their money out and they leave. And that's exactly what's going to happen if we continue to support this. The NDP is looking towards the future. We should all be looking towards the future, and that's a clean earth.
Thanks, Corey. Who wants to go next? Mr. Jeffers, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chuck. Corey, the oil and gas sector is a monster driver for this region. All of those other sectors that you mentioned, agriculture, mining, forestry, are also critically important. But to think that oil and gas is not going away, or it isn't going away anytime soon, but it's directly tied to our benefits in environment. Those two programs go hand in hand. Environment is absolutely crucial that we push for Canadian resources to make the mix in the world, generate revenues so that we can lead the world in alternative energy development, research and development. Our oil and gas companies are first and foremost energy companies, and having things that are counterproductive like carbon tax or carbon levy as opposed or proposed by the Conservative Party, those are counterintuitive to developing of our resources and helping out the world and becoming a better place.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffrey. Ms. Kendall, your platform is somewhat similar when it comes to ending oil and gas subsidies. Give us your thoughts on the balance between jobs and environment when it comes to that, in our region in particular.
Yeah, so I first want to start with the statistic for across Canada. So we have over 2 million jobs in the agricultural sector in Canada and about 500,000 in the oil and gas sector. And so why is that? It's because the oil and gas is removed and pumped and taken away and sent abroad, and the agricultural products are actually here. They're eaten, they're consumed, they're value added, they're processed, they're packaged, and then potentially sent out or interprovincially. So if we were to think about those kinds of balances, we just don't have those kinds of balances here in this province. We're not reaping all of the benefits. It's very much like very much like forestry. The trees are cut, the trees are sent, they're sent as whole logs. There's a huge push for that value-added sector and that value-added piece. It's all about take it and run, and we definitely need some stronger environment.
Thank you. Mr. Dick, we're going to try you again and see if your audio is good on this one. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Okay, People's Party of Canada is pro-project. We are pro-industry, and we are anti-CERB, and that will help a lot with economy and jobs. If we stop putting red tape around all the pipeline projects, it will go a long ways for the industry. And I really agree with what Dave was saying and what many of the other candidates are saying, that it's actually it's a much cleaner energy than what they're using around the world. And if we want to reduce global warming issues, we need to get it to market.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. Amir, your thoughts? Oh, I don't have your audio, Amir. I'll come back to you. We'll go to Bob, and we'll come back to you.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, great question again. We can be world leaders in energy production, in clean energy, but also world leaders in the environment, like I said before. One thing that we are looking at, and we are doing a great job already in Canada, is carbon sequestration. There's some great projects in Saskatchewan that sequester carbon, actually pull carbon out of the air and put it into the ground. So we can develop our energy, we can ship it overseas and see the benefits of that, offsetting higher emitting forms of energy, but also actually see the reduction where we pull carbon out of the air right here in Canada. We've got a great story here in Canada, and again, we need to see more of Canada around the class.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Phil?
Yeah, if Canadians want to reduce emissions and pollution, and all they need to do is stop buying Chinese. There's your big world emitter, not Canada, it's China. It's pretty basic. There's the facts, folks. Yeah, check out forthfront.ca online.
Thank you, Phil.
You get to vote on all these things. My opinion is irrelevant. Yours is what counts.
Okay.
All I want from government is less of it.
I think we're on to Amir. We're going to try you again, Amir. Do we have you? No, we don't have you. Sorry. We'll get you back. Actually, we're still having some audio problems with Amir. Did I miss anybody? We got everybody on that question correct? Let's open the floor up to debate on this one now. If there's any rebuttals we want on this one, on jobs and economy in our region. Bob, you got your hand up.
About this debate about whether energy is the enemy or it's good. And we've always said that energy is going to be the key to our success in the future. It's been key to our success when we were in government from 2011 to 2015. Some of these projects are being realized now. And again, it's not just key to our economy, it's key to the environment and Canada's environmental influence around the world. We need to embrace it.
Thanks, Mr. Zimmer. Amir, let's just try your audio again. I think we have you now.
Yes, I believe so. Can you guys hear me?
We have you. You're on.
Yeah.
We got you.
Perfect. So, regarding the debate between jobs and oil and gas industry and environment, we have to make sure that we are having a balanced approach on this case. We want to have a strong oil and gas industry exit. That's not because we're so in love with the CEOs of these companies. It's because we want to make sure
that
our people that are working in these industries are actually well supported and they can have a better and smoother transition to another economy or industry like the agriculture industry that I said. And that's going to help us a lot through the food security topic that I was talking about. And, this is a food supply chain. We have to make sure that our oceanways are supported as well. And this is something that the Conservatives are planning to scrap it away. Liberals Party already had a plan and implemented this. And we will move forward with the same plan of making sure that our waterways are protected as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Corey, you got your hand up. Corey,
good to know that the Liberals are going to continue and support the waterways the way they have. They just released more sewage for an extra 20 years into the St. Lawrence River. Way to go, Liberals. As far as the political doublespeak goes, in terms of
they
carbon
stopped
tax,
halfway, Dave.
carbon levy, this is counterintuitive. Again, we are, and we're not talking about the whole country. We're running as an MP for this riding, right here in northeastern BC, and we are resource rich, and this is the resources that will save the day for Canada. We have an opportunity here to take advantage of this and move our country forward, and northeast BC can lead the way.
Corey, go
ahead.
And
I'm glad you're standing up. I'm glad you're standing up, Dave,
Phil,
because
up,
obviously the Conservative previous MP person didn't do that, right? It's refreshing to see some people that are actually standing up and they have some ideas about this riding. I will tell you this, though. Investing in a bad bet is probably not the best way to spend the money. The Liberals bought a pipeline for you guys. You should be happy right now. What I would like to see is some imagination. Imagination. Let's think about the things that we can do to make this riding better by using the tools that we have in front of us, new technologies.
Get natural gas around the world. That'll make the whole world better.
Natural gas. You like that word, natural gas. Have you ever opened up a furnace, Bob? That's my trade. There's nothing natural about this gas. That is a name, that is a brand that was put on it. When you open that machine, it's filthy and gross, and you are burning fuel. That's all it is. You're putting more carbon up the air. Is it more efficient than it was in the 1940s? Of course it was. But that's technology. It's a transition.
We emit 1.5% of the world's emissions.
Bad money.
China has 25.
Corey,
we can do a lot more.
You guys really like to do the dog whistle on China, which is fine. Let's talk about India. India is by far.
Corey,
we need referees here, people.
Yeah, Corey, let's get Phil on. Phil, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, I've got an innovative idea to deal with jobs and the jobless. Every town, your town, has a standing army of unemployed, homeless, derelicts, and opioid addicts. Now, I can tell you that addiction is an issue that is being met with harm reduction and substance replacement therapy. What needs to happen is complete abstinence always must be an option for anyone who wants to get off the drugs and get off the street and become healthy in their lives. It must always be an option. And I'm telling you that if these people could get their lives together and become healthy, that they would be excellent employees in your business and they'd probably be happy to have the job, happy to have something to do. It's got to be better than sitting on frozen concrete getting piles downtown. So
Okay, let's wrap it up, Phil, on this
there's
section.
my innovative idea, and I think it's one that could work. It's a resource that should be tapped.
I still think we need to work towards waste management industry to recycle every ounce of waste generated by each sector of society. We may not be the most wasteful in this planet, but we are wasteful within Canada's borders, and we have very poor environmental laws to watch it all happen.
Excellent. Thank you guys on this section. We're going to move on to reconciliation. Matt's going to kick us off on the first question for reconciliation. Matt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chuck. Candidates, as you know, we're in Treaty 8 territory for our neighbors in Prince George, Lately Tenay territory. September 30th will be the first federal National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. How will you be spending it? How should constituents be spending it?
Mr. Jeffrey, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, I hope to be out with some of the people that I've been working with the most, in particular, the Doig River First Nations, and a shout out to Shona Nelson and Chief Makatahe out there. They've been inspirational for me, developing some new ideas and are very progressive in their approach to how we can move forward together. And inclusion and engagement and proper consultation has to happen up front. And if we don't start there, we're right back to square one. If we keep voting for the same thing and doing the same thing over and over and over, we're never going to get anywhere. We need to change things up. We need to have a Western voice. We need to include everybody, and that includes our First Nations.
Corey, go ahead.
Okay. 6,502. That's how many bodies that we found so far. What we need is a definite change, especially for our previously sitting MP, who's decided that Indigenous women, to remain safe, need to stay on the reserve and get a job. That's old. It's gross. It's one of the reasons that I decided to run. What you should be doing on the 30th is you should be taking time and thinking about what you can do to make things better. You should be walking together with our Indigenous cousins. We should be listening to what they need, because they have needs, and they've clearly spoken and given us these needs. We have studies that are huge. Let's do something with them. The NDP is the only government that has made meaningful commitment to do this.
Bob, we'll let you get a rebuttal. I'm sure you want a rebuttal on that. Go ahead.
Thanks. Well, just speaking about reconciliation, we support treaty rights in the process of reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous people. We also created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as part of the 2007 Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement, which recognized that the Indian residential school system had profoundly lasting and damaging impacts on Indigenous culture, heritage, and language. We support truth and reconciliation.
Thanks, Bob. Amir?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. So I think UNDRIP will be a great framework for us to start educating ourselves regarding the reconciliation. I believe that there's so many steps that we have to start in homes. We have to start educating within our families, and then try to understand the pain that our brothers and sisters from the Indigenous communities have endured. So I believe that this will be a great approach, and I invite people to have a more human-based answers when questions are posed. This is not the best way to just read it off through a binder or something.
Thanks, Amir. Ryan, give us your thoughts. Oh, Ryan, you're out of jolt again. Ms. Kendall?
Thank you. The challenges facing our Indigenous communities in our riding, as well as across Canada, is very diverse. They're as diverse as the individual cultures and the environments that they reside within. And why are they so unique? Is because the spiritual components of the water, the air, the creatures, the flora, the fauna, the trees that live there are what the people resonate with. And those are the things that are missing when we have all of these political conversations about oil, gas, money. Is always missing the spiritual component. So we need to sit down with our First Nations, Indigenous, Métis individuals to have that conversation, to start to understand it at that level.
Thanks, Ms. Kendall. We're going to go to Phil. Just a note, Ryan, you're going to have to reconnect again. We're having bad audio on that. So reconnect. We'll go to Phil while you reconnect. Go ahead, Phil.
All right. Well, I know a few Native peoples, and they have told me that they feel kind of the same way I do. They wish government would leave them alone. Just leave us alone. But beyond that, did you know that Indians are not allowed to own land on the reserves? It's a collective, and they just, they get a piece to live on, but they don't own it. And I think they would like to own their own land, and they should have the right to do so. And if there's anything truly racist going on in Canada, that's what it is. Why are Natives not allowed to own their own land that they live on? So I think that's a good question. And, this thing is what happened with the residential
We'll get more Phil on the open
terrible.
debate. We'll get more on the open debate.
It's disgusting. It's a black eye for Canada.
We're going to try Ryan again. Ryan? Go ahead. No, we don't have your audio on that again. We'll come back. We'll try to get your audio again. We're going to go to Emily to ask the next question on reconciliation. Emily?
And so how do you intend to address systemic racism within the region? What are immediate actions that you would take to create a more inclusive society for marginalized communities, such as BIPOC and LGBTQ?
Thanks, Emily, for the question. Corey, why don't you start us off on that question?
Sure. Thank you very much for the question, Emily. Here's what we need to do. We need to let human beings be human beings, and we need to support them with whatever choices they make, rather than being like our previous MP who decided that he would like to vote to block the anti-conversion therapy law. That's ridiculous. My daughter doesn't need to be converted, and none of my gay friends need to be converted. None of my colored friends need to be converted. What we need to do is make sure that we are actually being more progressive as human beings. We need to actually teach our history in school, for Pete's sakes. I got people in this panel that are telling me they didn't know residential schools existed. We need to do the emotional labor, not the people that need the help. They don't need to do that. That should be us.
Thanks, Corey. Mr. Zimmer, go ahead.
Yeah, I oppose conversion therapy. The Liberals had the opportunity to correct the problem with the bill, C6 specifically, that would have protected conversations between parents and children, pastors and their congregation, and counselors and their patients. And they refused to do that as part of the legislation. It then was voted, 63 of our members voted against that particular bill for that reason. That said, conservative government will ban conversion therapy.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. Let's go to Amir.
So the best way that we can actually address this issue is to make sure that Bob Zimmer is not going to be our MP moving forward. So that's number one. If the entire Conservative caucus votes to ban conversion therapy, this man will not. Make sure that you hear this twice. So, regarding the reconciliation, we need to make sure that, the systemic racism that we have, I expected, the only person that addressed this later to me was Ryan. Previous debate that I had with the rest of the panel, some hecklers came, and then every time that I was about to speak, they cut me off, and then from that point on, the entire debate was shut down. And when we have representatives like Bob Zimmer who don't interrupt those people to cut them off and allow me to speak, no wonder why we have the systemic racism in this community and across Canada.
Thanks, Amir. Ms. Kendall, go ahead.
Yes, we definitely, I work in community development. It's a field that I've been working in for the last 20 years, listening to the most marginalized voices in our community in Prince George and in the North. There's a wide gender spectrum. There's a wide minority spectrum. There's just many people that need to have their needs met in the way that need to meet them. We can't put people into boxes. We need to create the frameworks that allow them to have their needs met, how they need them met within their communities, and the federal government needs to support that.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Let's try Ryan again and see if, Ryan, if your audio is good.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Perfect. Okay, I'd like to speak to the reconciliation thing as well, if I can.
Yeah, we'll give you extra time on the clock for that too.
Okay. So regarding reconciliation, I think it's an excellent opportunity to work towards reconciliation in our communities. You can't have reconciliation handed down from the federal government, but I think we can, out of a genuine heart for reconciliation, we can organize with the surrounding reserves to see what would be meaningful for them, and I think that's an opportunity we should not miss as a community for sure. So I appreciate that question. On the issue of the second question there, it's an interesting predicament that we have. I think the solution, or the problem that we had at the beginning was there was some people that were mistreating other people, whether it's the issue of Indigenous peoples, whether it's the issue of LGBTQ, whatever it is. I describe it like this. We have 10 children, one kid's picking on another kid, and the government steps in and says, listen, nobody gets a birthday party except for this one person gets a birthday party. And it doesn't resolve they get 4 birthday parties actually. But it doesn't resolve the issue. It actually creates tension between them, this one individual that's being picked on, and the rest of society, because the natural propensity for envy gets all of us, and it's frustrating to watch the government take a problem and make it worse.
Excellent. Thanks, Mr. Dick. Mr. Jeffers, go ahead.
Thank you, Chuck. It's a great question, and it is one of incredible sensitivity. All I can do is speak for the Maverick Party, which is an inclusive party. We accept all comers. It doesn't matter. For myself, I keep things very, very simple. You're a good person or you're not. You can do the job or you can't. And after that, everything else is irrelevant. So when it comes to inclusion and everything else, one of the things that I really do like to see, especially in our communities, is some of the new cultures and the new restaurants and the new things that are shaping our towns and villages and everything else around us. It's been very inclusive from my end. I really appreciate what other cultures bring to us and to the Northeast, and it's just a tremendous place to be. I encourage more to come out and enjoy and participate and walk with each other. It's just a great place to be. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Dave. Phil, you're the last one on this question, so give us your thoughts.
Yep. I believe the government has no place in the bedrooms of Canadians. I also believe the government has no business in your underwear or panties. And the thing that really concerns me about LGBTQ, I hope I got that right, is 40% suicide rate. This is not a good demographic to be in. And I would like to see the focus be on mental health and counseling and help for these people. A 40% suicide rate is unconscionable. And I just bet you that LGBTQ would probably like government to leave them alone, just like
Thank you, Phil.
The rest of Canada.
Thank you, Phil. So we're going to do one more question from John, and then we'll do the open debate, and then we're just going to have a couple open debate questions after and wrap up the evening, just so everybody's got an idea what's going on. So, John, we're going to go over to you for your last question on reconciliation, then the open debate, and then we're going to wrap up the evening after that. So, John, go ahead.
Thank you. So, with the discovery that happened over the summer and just the wave of momentum that's come from it, it's forced a lot of people to look in the mirror and to really evaluate themselves. And one thing I'm thinking about is, what's something that you've learned from looking at Indigenous communities or the culture that would strengthen the way that you, for example, care for the environment or improve the way that you interact with one another? And a couple of examples that I think of is the idea of cultural burns to protect and reinvigorate forests, or the language not using capital letters for names or places in the language so that nobody's above the other. So what's something that you've learned from Indigenous culture that you really appreciate and that you want to bring into your world?
Miss Kendall, why don't you start us off on that one?
Thank you. I did my degree at the University in First Nations Studies, and I've worked with many First Nations across the North. I've worked in Aboriginal gang prevention, and we really must listen to our Indigenous peoples and act responsibly and with integrity as to what it is that they are requesting of us. We must follow through with reconciliation steps as each community requires, requests, suggests, and begs of the federal government. Some of the work that I've done is bringing the stories of our elders to the public eye, and actually speaking to them and recording them and transcribing them and sharing those. And so if we could incorporate those stories in our grade schools and as children grow up, so that in our communities they're fully aware of who the people are that they live with, I think that would be very beneficial.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Amir.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfect. So my family for the past 3 years, we're directly involved with First Nations. My wife works for one of the First Nation communities, and we've learned a lot. We attended their their ceremonies and everything. And one thing that I really enjoyed a lot about First Nations overall is that the level of connection that they have with a higher being, regardless of what you want to call it, that I don't really care about that, but that level of connection is something that I, as a religious person, I call myself, I do not see that level of connection around my peers as well. So this is something that I think we can actually learn from our brothers and sisters as well.
Thank you, Amir. Ryan?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. So I have a really good friend who is an older Native gentleman. He teaches people how to make drums, and he's an incredible guy. He taught me how to tan hides, and I spent a fair amount of time working with Native community, and I actually spoke to some of the council at the Halfway about starting a program for their young people, teaching them to build log cabins. One of the issues is, we don't actually want to get into that because I want to mention the fact that they have an amazing way of using our resources fully. So they take and they'll hunt something and they'll use the hide, they'll use the brains. They're very resourceful, and I appreciate their ingenuity. It's incredible.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Dick. Mr. Jeffers?
Thank you, and it's an excellent question once again. Really appreciating the attention that's gone into some of these questions. It's phenomenal. As far as Indigenous cultures go, our kids to this day still talk about when they were in elementary school and got to go and visit, participate in things like Doig Days or cultural days out at different traditional grounds. And I think the traditions, the stories, the dancing, the whole bit. I was very, very fortunate in the Dawson Creek parade just before the rodeo to follow a 3-time world champion hoop dancer. Those kind of things are phenomenal in how they support each other and the differences in our cultures and how that goes. But overall, it's probably the sense of family and extended family that just shines through all the time, and how they can support and do that. I wish we could all learn a lot from that.
Thanks, Dave. Corey, go ahead. You have the floor.
Sure. I want to say, first of all, how banal these comments are. The first thing that we should be doing is honoring our frickin' treaties. The second thing that we should be doing is finding justice for these people that were abused and murdered in the residential schools. These people are still alive. Residential schools were only what we need to be doing, instead of talking about hoop dancing, which is beautiful, and we need to be talking about, aren't they swell at these certain things? We need to be honoring our commitments to these people. We need to deal with them nation to nation. And if an MP can't see that, should they be an MP? What we need to be doing is honoring our commitments to our cousins.
Thank you, Corey. We'll get more on the open from that. Phil.
Hello. Yeah.
Go ahead, Phil. We can hear you.
I was saying earlier that the residential school thing is terrible, but it is something that did happen quite a long time ago. And I think it's suspicious that the Liberals pulled that one out of their hat as a diversion from what they were up to. I'm not saying it doesn't need addressing, but how we address it, I think, is very important. And, you know, I would really like to see the Catholic Church stand up, because holding the current generation responsible for the harms that were done all those years ago is disgusting. My kids aren't responsible for that. My generation is not responsible for what happened to them. It just isn't. So it's high time that the Catholic Church and the evangelists and whoever was involved in that abuse, they were contracted. They are responsible, and they need to buck up now.
We'll get more on the open debate on that. Bob, you're last on this question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, I think what I've discovered over many meetings and many visits with many First Nations across the riding is it starts off with, first of all, respect, and then to listen. And that's what I value highly as being friends, and the communication process where we talk. But ultimately, it really starts with respect, and you know, respect that everybody's created equal. And when I have talked with First Nation leaders, it's been great. And again, just a foundation of respect.
Thank you, Bob. We're going to open it up for any rebuttals and open debate now. So if any of you guys have anything more to say or any rebuttals from the other candidates, now's our time. We have Amir, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I love canoeing.
Then we'll do Phil.
I recommend it.
Oh, sorry, we're doing Phil first. Go ahead, Phil. Go ahead, Phil.
If you didn't catch that, I repeat, I really appreciate canoes. Natives are responsible for inventing them. I would recommend getting one and spending hours in it, venturing forth in our wilderness. You'll learn what it's like to be First Nations.
And that's it?
Thank you, Phil. Amir?
Oh my God. Hey, make sure you don't forget to play some lacrosse too.
Amir?
What the actual, are we going to entertain this?
No.
Like, this is insulting.
Okay,
if I was an Indigenous person
Corey,
watching this, I'd be like shaking my head.
Brother,
Amir, go ahead.
I'm
Corey
just
will
getting
go to you.
upset.
some of the points.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amir.
So, I don't believe that anyone is blaming our generation for what happened back in 100 years ago or whatever. Point is, can you sympathize? Can you actually understand the pain? And to call this a liberal division thing, you're already politicizing this topic that it just doesn't make sense at this point. It just doesn't. So have a little bit of respect here. There we go. We have signs up again. Liberal, deficit, whatever. Good job. This is not going to work, brother.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Corey.
man.
You had some comments, Corey. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. Look, man, all we have to do is be the best people that we can be, and you do the best you can with what you know. When you know more, you do better. That's what it is. We have to walk together. And as Bob said, we need to show respect. Talking about canoes and all that baloney, that doesn't show respect. What shows respect is that these people are valuable. They were here before us. This is their land. I started off with an acknowledgement. This is their unceded territory of the Lake Tenay. We are guests here. Every single one of us in this Zoom right now is a frickin' immigrant. Don't forget it. That's what we need to be talking about. Nation to nation building. And for the other people who are saying that, I don't even know what to say with some of the things I've heard tonight. I just want to apologize to my cousins and all the other people that have to listen to this.
Miss Kendall, do you have your hand up?
Thank you. Yes. So I'm listening to some of the points about how we shouldn't be paying for things that have happened in the past, but we still have issues for our Indigenous peoples across Canada, including our murdered and missing women and girls. That is become a federal issue, and we still have racialism happening at the police level in communities. I've seen it myself. I've seen women who've died being hung by somebody and then being told that, oh, she just overdosed, when there were people there. They saw what happened. And so we have to acknowledge that these challenges continue in these communities, in our communities, our very own communities.
Dave, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had to switch to my phone. I apologize. My computer died, but you're absolutely correct, both Corey and Catherine. And in terms of what we have developed here, it's something that needs to be addressed, and we are currently fighting, still to this day, residential schools issues in court to the tune of $15,000 a week. It's got to stop. We've got to stop somewhere.
Do we have any more thoughts, comments?
I want to say something, but Ryan's up first.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think honestly, on a lot of the issues, there is an understanding in this group that we genuinely care for the Aboriginal people, and we want reconciliation, and we want to make some practical steps towards that. And we all agree that that this September 30th, we need to be mindful of how we can pursue that. And I think rather than chewing each other out for the little indifferences, I think honestly, we need to come together as a community to work towards reconciliation instead of bickering. So
That's
go ahead, Chuck.
true. That's true, but I will say that these are more than little differences, right? These are more than little differences. You got a guy here saying that, it's a liberal ploy. That's wrong. We've got people that were still employed in residential schools walking around free right now in our community. You cannot have reconciliation without justice. Why are these people not in jail? Why are they not answering for the crimes that they committed? Why do my Indigenous cousins have to see these people in communities where they live? It's freaking outrageous that we're even, wow, canoes. That's
Phil,
great.
You had your hand up, Phil?
Yeah. A guy named Wally Opal headed up a inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women. And what he found was that a lot of the people involved were living very high-risk lifestyles.
No.
And it's
no, you don't get to say that
online. Everybody has.
You don't. You search it online.
Would you please?
You don't get to say that.
Give him 10 seconds.
No, I'm not going to give him equal time for this. It's racist. He can sit down.
It is not racist. It is not.
You are being a racist, sir.
If you want to look at statistics, okay? It's
yes,
very,
show me
very
them.
Clear.
Show me them. Where are they?
Phil, what's your alternative? What is your plan then? Yeah. Now let's say that your argument is right. Wow. What's your plan?
My plan would be to work with all of the separate bands to work on something that resembles
and what is it?
And personal responsibility.
Let me tell you, brother. I'm an immigrant. I don't want to play the.
I have an answer if you'll let me answer.
I'm an immigrant, and I'm not going to play the identitarian card. But let me tell you something. What you're saying is flat racist.
It is
Get your facts right.
I've never been a racist, but I suspect you may be.
Okay,
okay, let's wrap it up. Okay, everybody, thank you for your comments on reconciliation. So I guess we're going to wrap the evening up. It's been a pleasure to have this debate, this forum. Everybody, thank you for coming out. Amir, Ryan, Phil, Dave, Miss Kendall, Corey, and Mr. Zimmer, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Again, like I said at the opening of the forum, it's with mad respect that you guys put your name in the hat and do what you're doing. You obviously want to pull a lever for change, and it's much respect that you guys are out here putting your name forward in this short but a marathon of a race for an election. I'd like to thank the Fort St. John Chamber of Commerce, Moose FM, Energetic City, CJDC, Bell Media, and Alaska Highway News, Matt, Emily, and John. And behind the audio video is Mr. Adam Rayburn. So thanks everybody for coming out. Thanks for tuning in, and have a very good evening. Thank you very much, guys.